Welcome to Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants with me, Shelley Fishel of Tomorrow's VA and Joe Brianti of JLB Support Solutions. In each episode, we'll chat about what we're up to and bring you fantastic interviews with guest experts, as well as our App of the Month and top tips, all aimed at helping you to grow your VA business. So grab a cuppa, sit back and join us for a fun-filled hour. Hi Joe, welcome to episode number 11. Can you believe it?
It's going so fast. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? We're 11 in and some great guests already and some even more wonderful guests lined up in the future too.
Absolutely. And of course, we've been recording all of these in quite a concentrated time frame. So we're not 11 weeks in as we record it, but by the time this one goes out, it will be 11 weeks from the launch. So it's probably sometime in July, I would imagine. And we're here at the middle of May at the moment. So it's been great fun and a steep learning curve, as we keep saying. So I think we should stop saying that because we kind of got our process mapped out now, haven't we? We know exactly how we're going to approach each of these episodes, the before, the during and the after bits. So we're kind of getting on well with that. So outside of all of that podcast stuff that we've both been working on almost to the exclusion of anything else for the last week or so, what else have you been up to, Joe, at the moment?
Well, happily, I have been able to get into my favourite open space, 40 hectares of nature, forest, heathland. It's been great to see how nature is blossoming and the spring flowers are out, the bluebells, the speedwells. My dog has been loving it because she's been able to get out and have a really good run instead of a 30-minute on the lead or just a quick chase with the ball at very random times of the day, because obviously we're still in sort of isolation and social distancing. So that has been absolutely joyful, and I found it such a boost to my mood after this lockdown period. How has it been for you, Shelley?
Well, here in Israel, nearly all restrictions have been lifted. So everything is more or less open. The schools are starting to go back over the next few days, probably by the end of next week. Although my kids haven't sent their kids to school, my children who live here haven't sent their children to school this week. They're a bit worried, want to make sure that it's safe for them all to go back. Yeah. So I've actually been to the shopping mall. I'd bought an external hard drive while we were in lockdown, and when I plugged it into my laptop, it didn't work. So I plugged it into my other laptop because I'm greedy and have more than one, and it didn't work on that one either. So then I plugged it into my husband's laptop, and it didn't work on his either. It just wasn't being recognised. So I actually took it backwards. The mall's opened on Thursday. Today is Tuesday. Today is Tuesday. Yeah, so we lose track. So on Friday, I went to the mall and I went to have a look, but I'd forgotten to take it with me. So I ended up having to go back yesterday. So I went back yesterday. So I've been to the mall twice. Interesting to see, a lot of the shops are open. Some are still closed. Most people wearing masks because we have to wear masks when we go out. And I got my new hard drive, so they changed it for me, which was great. And then I've been able to go for proper walks because I don't know if you remember, we had this 100-meter rule, which then became 500 meters, where that's how far we could go outside where we live. So now I can walk along the promenade. We live by the sea and have this fabulous sea view, and it really does lift your mood to go out and walk along. And also the weather is turning really nice now. It's not too hot yet. So I'm going out and I'm spurred on to go for those walks because I've put a little bit of weight on over the last period, and I'm sure I'm not alone, but it's very frustrating. So for me, the missing piece, because I eat sensibly, is exercise. Yeah. So my walks are in there. So I was out this morning about 6:45. I did a good close to an hour's walk. So that's my plan going forward, to carry on with that. But I actually meant to say, when you said about being able to get out with Mabel for your walks, Mabel or Martha?
Martha.
Martha. And Mabel was Kathy Salisbury's dog, wasn't
That's
she?
correct, yes.
Well, both begin with M, and they're both border collies, so that's my excuse. So being able to get out with Martha, and how Martha was finding it beneficial on you, and you actually do. You look better for being able to get out.
It makes such a difference. You don't realise how important, or how much importance you place on the very simple things in life. And for me, being able to go alone with the dog, it's quiet time. I run a busy home with family, like a lot of us, and that just quiet hours walk in the fresh air is absolutely brilliant and great for, you know, my mental and physical well-being. And I'm looking forward to the time when we can all start thinking about booking holidays and that sort of thing. I'm sure you've got some plans of far-flung destinations that you'd like to think of later in the year.
Yes, we have 2 grandchildren on the way, one in the UK and one in New York, one in America. And at the moment, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to wait and see a bit what the situation is, because here the flights are not really available yet. They will be, I'm sure, in the next however long. And it could be that if we do decide to go, when we come back, we'll have to go into quarantine for 2 weeks as we come back, because that was the case before. So we'll see. But talking about booking holidays leads us really nicely into introducing today's guest. Today's guest is Jules Taylor of Tailor Made PA. I've known Jules via online for a little while, and we've become friends. And she's helped me out with a couple of things. I did a webinar, and she managed the chat and did stuff for me, which was really kind of her. And she's taken a couple of my courses. So it's really nice to be able to chat to her and to let our listeners know that a VA, a virtual assistant, can do many different kinds of
Absolutely.
work. So that leads us nicely into welcoming our guest today, Jules Taylor, who is a travel VA. And we're going to ask her lots of questions about why she became a VA, why she's a travel VA, and if that's all she does. And I'm sure, Jo, that you've got loads of questions that you want to ask too.
Oh, absolutely. I love travelling, so I'm eager to hear what Jules has got to tell us.
Okay, well, let's let her in then. That was much better.
Yeah.
Welcome, Jules, to Virtually Amazing, the podcast. We were just talking before that this is going to be episode number 11, and we can't quite believe we've got that many under our belt so far. But we are recording this batch actually in a very concentrated time frame. But we are delighted to have you with us. And we want to talk to you about all things about why you became a VA, what you love about it, and what your specialism is. And between us, we've got some questions for you. So if you want to just kick off and tell us who you are and what you do, and what made you jump ship and become your own boss?
Yeah. So I had been working in London as a corporate PA for the previous 12 years. And I guess had become a bit disillusioned about the lack of development opportunities for a PA within the corporate world. I'd had funding declined for a course that my line manager, who I adored, and my mentor within learning and development had approved. And I guess I was just a bit disillusioned, and I happened to go to the office show in 2018. In the snow. I'd actually won some free courses, which is the reason I'd persevered and gone. I'd been given one of the sort of day pass of courses, so I'd gone for that reason. And I bumped into Claire Grace, who was managing the VIP VA stand that day, and we got talking. I'd heard about VAs in the past and always kind of discarded it as a financial risk I couldn't afford to take. and then I don't know, I was just, I think perhaps there's something about being in your 40s rather than your 30s that makes you a bit braver. And I think I was just so inspired after talking to Claire that literally within 24 hours I had a domain name. I started to look into it a bit more. I then signed up for the VIPVA nurture program and decided to kind of go into it properly and look at what was there. And obviously GDPR was just about to launch. So I then kind of I signed up with Annabelle Kay and did her GDPR training. And on the back of that, took it quite slow in how I sort of did my website myself using a builder. And then actually I got headhunted on LinkedIn and took another job. I think that was my way of saying, look, am I just fed up with what I've been doing? I've been in the same job in effect for 9 years. Was I just disillusioned because of the lack of development? Or did I really want to go for it? And was this something I really wanted to do? And it became apparent quite quickly in the new job that actually, no, I did just want to give it a go and go it alone, I guess is the... so I took that leap of faith last April, resigned from my job, which I was really well paid for, but I just... so I've been doing this a year and 2 weeks, I guess.
Wow.
So I sort of celebrated my year in business by relaunching my website on WordPress and just looking at just moving things forward now.
Fab. So how do you find that kind of now being your own boss, use the words go it alone. So how do you find now working alone as opposed to working as a PA as part of a team?
Yeah, I think I've always had multiple bosses. So I think to a certain degree you are working, because you're not working one-to-one with someone, you are very much kind of managing yourself anyway, because you're juggling the demands of 3 different... I mean, I think I had varied between 2 and 4, but I think towards the end I had 3 for a long period of time. So you're used to juggling the demands. So you're in a way working for yourself and managing yourself anyway. As much as we had a team of PAs, that's one of the things, I guess, one of the companies I work for, we were quite critical of, even as ourselves as PAs, is we all worked very much in silos. So I think actually from that point of view, not a lot has changed. Whereas I jugged multiple bosses within one organisation, I'm now just juggling multiple clients in a different way. So I think actually from that point of view, always working for multiple bosses actually has really benefited me.
Yeah. Jo, have you got any questions?
I just wonder how Jules, as a very competent PA working in that high-powered sort of environment, how did you come to choose your niche? Because I know that you offer some very niche services.
Yeah, I think it's split really. I see myself as a virtual assistant. I see myself very much in that traditional PA mould, because that's my background. When I'm looking to work with people, I want to work with people that I would offer traditional PA services to, which is, for me, sadly, I love diary management. I love organising people's calendars. I mean, a lovely colour-coded diary makes my heart happy. I did have a boss that once said to me, "You know, I don't take any notice of the colours, right?" And I was like, "It's not for you, it's for me." So for me, I get pleasure from knowing it's organised. And then obviously we're going to talk about the travel side. That was my early, let me go back, I guess. My first career was as a travel agent. One thing I noticed when I was doing all my research into becoming a virtual assistant, and I did a lot of looking at other people's websites and looking at a lot of different research that was out there using all the different hubs available, I noticed that everybody said they would research your holiday. My first reaction as an ex-travel agent said, why would you pay someone to research your holiday? Why wouldn't you just ring a travel agent? Which kind of then made me think, well, hang on a second, I've got something here. I've been a travel agent. I could really, and don't get me wrong, I've got friends that still work on the high street. I've got friends that are travel counsellors. So there was lots of opportunity where I could have done the same and done the research and rung one of my friends and got them to book it, or probably just rung one of my friends to get them to do the research and book it, if I'm really honest. But I thought, well, hang on a second, there's something here. And I don't get me wrong, I hadn't been a travel agent for 15 years. So I did a bit of research. I mean, it was something that I loved to travel myself, stemming from being a travel agent. So it was something that I've always kind of stayed in with, and I say I've still got friends. So I just looked at opportunities where actually it gave me that added edge. I could research it, but actually I can book it as well. But it also gives me that way of offering a service that perhaps, and I know there are a few out there, but there's not many people that offer that ability to be able to book the travel as well. But it also gives the flexibility that I can research it and check it as a travel agent, or I can research it and check it as a VA, because things like low cost flights would be a booking fee would apply, because obviously it's not like scheduled flights, you don't get commission or anything like that, but when you book low cost flights. So I have that ability where I can do that as a VA, because I can charge my time, which is a lot less than doing it as a travel agent, where I'd have to apply a booking fee to every single flight. So it gives me that sort of flexibility, whereas I can be a VA or a travel agent. Some clients, obviously, I work with, they literally contact me because they want a travel agent. Some clients will contact me because they want a VA that perhaps knows a bit more about travel. So it gives me that flexibility and something a bit, as you say, something a bit different.
Yeah.
And I never thought I'd have the opportunity to go back to travel. I mean, I'll be honest, I left travel because at the time I didn't want to work 7 days a week, which I was doing. And to be fair, the money's not great. I was in my sort of like coming up to my late 20s, I suppose, when I left retail travel, and I went into business development within travel initially. And I wanted to earn more money. I wanted more flexibility with my life, I guess, then. So I never thought really I'd have the opportunity to go back to travel. So it's actually been lovely in the fact that I've been able to pick it back up. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's been really interesting actually, because so much of travel has moved on. We didn't use the internet when I left. I left retail travel in 2002, and actually we didn't really use the internet in 2002 in the travel industry. The systems were all on view data still. I mean, I can remember September the 11th was kind of the big crisis just before I left. I was ringing home to my stepfather to get updates. I wasn't looking on the internet.
Yeah.
We were all ringing people at home to get updates, because we didn't use we had the internet in those days, and it was starting to come through. So things like that has really moved on. And obviously you've got the rise in people going, I found this cheap bucket thing. But actually there were so many things that haven't changed. Some of the systems literally are the same system that I used in 2002. That was a bit like, wow, hang on a second. Systems where you can't use a mouse. I'm a bit like, how does this work? And it is. So there's things that I mean, there's a couple of the sales reps that literally are the same ones from when I left in 2002. And it's been like, wow, okay. So it's been a bit like a time warp in a way, but I've loved it. I love going back to travel. I mean, a lot of people said to me, well, if that's your passion, should you do that, not be a VA? Should that? But actually, I wanted that balance between the two. And to me, the travel side was meant to be a value-added service to my VA business. And believe me, right now, I'm glad I did it that way.
I wanted to jump in and ask you a question there. So you say you went back to travel, and you are a proper travel agent, which means you're registered and qualified, whatever that means.
Yeah, which I am anyway.
Yeah.
It's just I'm not full-time, I guess.
Yeah. So did you have to do anything to re-register or re-qualify or renew that side of it, so people knew you were a real travel agent?
No, I am. So I work in partnership with a high street travel agent.
Right. Okay.
And so through them, they registered me with APTA. Don't get me wrong, I did speak to a couple of organisations before I signed up with who I'm with. And they did say, because I'd been out of travel for over 2 years, I had to join their training academy, one of which wanted to charge me 10 grand.
Wow.
I was like, didn't pay that to train to be a travel agent the first. When I think, God, I was 17 the first time I was let loose in a travel agency. I was a college student. I was offered the opportunity. Now I'm going to show my age a bit here. I was working, when I was at school, I worked for WH Smith. Now, for those of you old enough to remember, back in the 80s and the very early 90s, WH Smith had a travel agency.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And most people don't remember, but I was working at WH Smith. I'd done one of my elements on my leisure management course was travel. So I'd got to know the travel staff within our implant very well because they'd helped me with my homework. I'd stolen their brochures. So I got to know them quite well over that course, that sort of year. And they were going through the process of the management of the buyout, where they didn't know if they were staying open or closing. So they needed some help, staffing wise. And I'd just broken up from college, and they came to me and said, look, we're really desperate for staff. We can't employ, we don't know what's going on. We could be closed by the end of the summer. We really need some help. We've spoken to the manager and we understand that they're not offering the part-time staff extra hours over the summer. Would you come and work for us? I was like, oh, okay. For me, it was summer holiday pocket money in a way. So I went and became a travel agent for the summer. So literally I was 17. I wanted to teach horse riding. That was my goal at the time. So for me, going in at 17, no experience, and then I went back and did my final, they did close down. So I went back and did my final year of college, managed to get the college to drop one of my stuff. They just, funny enough, the college that year had just launched a travel course. So they managed to drop one of my subjects off my leisure management course and give me an extra travel course subject, which I had to do one-to-one with the tutor because it was the only way of fitting it into my itinerary. And then at the end of that, when I left college, I became a travel agent. But so literally, it was just so. And I walked in. So even then, I was just before my 18th birthday. I walked in to be a travel agent full time. So I didn't pay to train in effect the first time round. So being told I was going to have to pay 10 grand to.
No.
I was a bit like, no. So
that's a massive amount of money.
Yeah, and I just think I was just a bit like, wow. And don't get me wrong, I think there's an awful lot of. I need to be careful what I'm saying here. Probably there is a company out there that advertises frequently saying anybody can become a travel agent. And yeah, I guess you can, but you've got to do it the right way. And I would say to anybody, if you want to become a travel agent, train. You can't just become a travel agent overnight. You need to understand the principles. And that's the thing, the principles haven't changed. And I think that's really important because, and I think times like this is where a good quality travel agent that knows what they're talking about, that knows what they're doing, that has the right resource behind them is so important.
Jules, I wanted to ask, have you found there's been much change in the regulatory or control scenario within the travel agency business from when you started, took that break and then returned back to it?
Then, no, there wasn't. I think things hadn't really changed a great deal. I think they're now trying to change things because no one's seen a pandemic like this. I mean, I mentioned earlier about September the 11th, and I thought at the time that was the worst thing I'd ever go through in travel. But when I look back and compare it to now, with hindsight, it was the major impact was a few days. Obviously, the ongoing impact to America, people were more cautious to travel. The Americans were more cautious to let you in. But actually, the big impact was a few days. Okay, we suffered, it was quieter, and we did, so we had all our staff, I mean, it was coming up to Christmas, which was always a quiet time for travel anyway. We had all our staff on reduced hours, reduced wages, and then we made them in January, basically, which is our busy time, and it did then pick up, do 6 days a week for no extra money. And it was awful. I mean, it was the catalyst of me leaving retail travel. I'd done it for 10 years. The freedom of not having my weekends off was getting to me anyway, and it was just so tough. We'd put the staff through, as I say, 4 days a week, 6 days a week. We put them through financial strain, and then it was announced our big boss had received a £236,000 bonus. I had the travel press thrown up. In those days, we had the newspaper as opposed to the internet. And so one of my members of staff, as I walked through the door to start my shift, just threw the paper at my head and just said, "Justify that one to me," because as a part of the management team, I'd been stood up in our branch, and we'd been the ones telling staff they were going to have to do these 4 days a week. We were telling staff they were going to have to do 6 days a week. We were telling them they would have to have pay cuts. It was just, I mean, I took a part-time job that Christmas. I worked in New Look as a Christmas temp for 6 weeks to get my sort of salary back up to what I needed to earn, because that was the only way I'd had to justify it to my team. So I couldn't then make too much of I couldn't make too much of a fuss about it, because I'd been telling my team it's what we've got to do to survive. So the way I got around it was I took a Christmas temp job in New Look, and my boss knew the situation, and I just managed to juggle my hours and ran from one place to another some days.
Wow. But that all helps, doesn't it? It all helps and prepares you for what comes later on, and makes you
absolutely. Sometimes I forget I did that. Every now and then I get this reminder. But I did 6 weeks for New Look.
Yeah, it helps build that resilience. So when something like this happens, you know that you've faced difficult times before and you've come through them. So
absolutely. The one thing I learned in the travel industry is it's no matter what the financial crisis is, no matter what the situation is, people will always want to travel. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be, at the moment with something like this, you're going to get those that are really concerned about what the impact could be, and we don't know what that will be long term. But people, no matter how little money they've got, they will always find the time to take a holiday. Whether they would have normally had 2 weeks in the Caribbean and then they'll now do 2 weeks in Europe or something, is no matter what the financial crisis is, people always seem to need the holiday, and that's the one thing they very rarely give up. Yeah. So the industry, I think this year is going to be really slow. I don't think there'll be any movement till July at the earliest. I think personally, I probably wouldn't take a new booking. I've got people due to travel in the end of July, and I'm hoping they get to travel. I wouldn't take any new bookings now, ideally till 2021, or certainly not before sort of September.
Oh, it's really interesting. I had a question I wanted to ask about that. Yes, I wanted to go into the business side of things, because you're a VA, a travel VA, and you work with businesses. So one of the things that this pandemic has caused is a complete halt to business travel. And I think businesses are also now realizing that so much of what they deemed necessary travel actually isn't necessary anymore. Yeah. So with tools like we're using Zoom or my Microsoft Teams or whatever it is, there are so many web conferencing tools out there. You've got WebEx, you've got Adobe, you've got GoToMeeting, you've got GoToWebinar, you've got Easy Webinar, you've got 100 others, all different ones. So it's almost as if those face-to-face training sessions, meetings, conferences almost don't need to happen. What do you think the impact's going to be on the business travel side of things? That's a big question, I know.
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually. I was on a networking meeting last week, an online networking meeting, and the guest speaker was someone from American Airlines.
Oh.
And he was asked that very same question. And I think you will have companies that will definitely reduce their business travel. I think a lot of meetings that were almost done as a jolly will be reduced and moved online. I think there will always be the need for business travel. I think there's a lot of conferences that you need to be in person, you need to network, you need to and I think there's a lot of big conferences out there that will stay in person, therefore people will travel. And I think there's always, if you're negotiating contracts, I think there's always going to be the need to meet in person to talk it through, to build that relationship. I think even in the UK, I think there's a lot of, I think companies will perhaps look to maybe have one big in-person conference and then have the smaller ones or the regional one. I think that's the sort of thing that will perhaps move online. I think there will be a reduction in business travel, and I think we will see a reduction in travel, I think generally, I think for probably a couple of years. But I think it will bounce back. But I do think, as you say, the business conferences and things like that, I think there could be a change, but they'll definitely still carry on. I think there'll just be perhaps less of them.
Oh, well, that's good to know, because I love going to the PA show, and
things like you can. I just don't think you could do things like that.
No,
completely online.
You could do the speaker sessions, but you wouldn't get the networking. And
no,
certainly this year when I was there in February, the networking was incredibly valuable to me. It was more valuable to me than the speaking bit that I did. From that perspective, so I'm pleased that you think those things will come back.
I think for me, look at the PA show. I wouldn't be here today had I not have gone in the snow in 2018. I wasn't looking to do it. It wasn't something I was researching at the time. It was something. I mean, my friend mentioned it to me, and I think it must have been. I think it's got to be over 10 years ago where I think she'd first heard about it, and I can remember her saying to me, we would be amazing. I think she was looking more at the lifestyle side of it. I think I was temping as a PA at the time. So I think between that, and we'd worked together in business development, we did a lot with football together, and I think she said to me, God, you and I should do something like that. We'd be amazing together doing it. And I think at the time I was like, I was probably in my very early 30s, probably just turned 30, single girl, large mortgage, couldn't possibly do something like that. But at 45, still single, still large mortgage, it didn't occur to me not to. I think it's just that very different mindset.
Yeah, if not now, when?
Yeah, and that was my thing, is I'd realised how quickly I was approaching, so 2018, I guess I was approaching 45. And I'd realised how quickly 30 to 45 had gone.
Yeah.
It seemed to have gone in the blink of an eye. And it made me think, actually, if that had gone as quickly as that, 45 to 60 was going to go just as quickly.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And did I want to be commuting at 60? Did I want to be doing that long sort of, do you know what I mean, that morning commute in, the long day in London, the commute home? And the answer was, no, I didn't think I did.
Yeah.
And I figured it was better to take the risk now and try and get myself established than trying to set it up at 55 when 60 was fast approaching. And I was thinking, oh God, the reality is I'm going to have to work to pay my mortgage off until I'm probably 67. I'd much rather be doing it at home, choosing what I want to do, when I want to do it, how I want to do it, than trying to do it later.
So what's your favourite part of being a VA? What's the bit you enjoy the most? I think listeners would really like to know, what is it that you enjoy doing the most?
Making a difference, I think. Getting someone organised, knowing you're helping them to do the best that they can do by doing the best that you can do to help them be the best, if that makes sense.
It totally.
And I love the variety. I do love the fact that I've got that ability now to do the travel, do the VA. I think I can always remember talking to someone about it a while back, sort of saying, I think in one day I'd been doing some internet research for someone else, for one client. I booked a holiday for someone else. I'd been trying to organise a Christmas party for another client, and I'd done some diary management for another client. So it was that just complete variety in the fact that you're not just thinking, oh, this is so monotonous, I'm doing the same thing day in, day out. It is that variety.
Yeah. Jo, have you got any last questions for Jules? And then we'll...
No, I mean, I know what Jules is saying about that whole age thing. You know, it does feel like it's now or never, and you know, just getting out there and doing it.
It's taking that risk. If I took the risk at 40, if I took the risk at 55, and it didn't work, I know it sounds. I don't want to sound negative. It would be harder for me to get a job.
Yeah,
totally get that.
Whereas if I, in the next 2 years, decide this just isn't working, I'm not earning enough, I'm young enough, don't feel it some days, but do you know what I mean? Being under 50, I'd feel much more confident going out there and getting a job.
Yes.
Then I think trying to sort of say at 55, I don't want to be commuting for the next, at that point, another 12 years. Right, I need to do it now. And then at 50, giving it a couple of years, getting to 57 and saying, this isn't working, I'm not earning enough, still got the mortgage to pay, now I need to go and get another job and I'm 57. So yeah, it was looking at it from that point. And there's something about being mid-40s that I probably should be more worried about the finances and that, and I just don't worry about it enough, probably.
No, I think it's that resilience factor of what you've been through in your life up to now, that you know this too shall pass, whatever this.
Yeah, exactly.
That you will come out the other side and you will make it happen. And you've had that experience of working 2 jobs to make it happen. And, you know, if you had to take a part-time job.
Which I do have, actually.
You could. Oh, you do? Right, okay.
I have worked part of... Again, as I say, not the best career choices recently. I've worked part-time at a football club for the last 12 years. From when I worked in football full-time for a little while, and then when I was temping as a PA, before I took the full-time contract, I got offered a job in football working in a ticket office, part-time, just match days. So I do that, I've done that for 12 years, we do that as well, but of course we're not there either at the moment. No. Not booking travel, not going to football. So that's it. I do have that. So I do have the VA, I have the travel, and actually I do have my little part-time job in football.
I have a portfolio career.
It's just at the moment they're all affected by coronavirus.
Well, I think that's the case for many men.
Yeah, exactly, and that's it. As I say, I think that goes back to what I said earlier. I've seen the impact of 9/11. I've seen the impact of foot and mouth, SARS, MERS, avian flu, bird flu. I can always remember going to Australia, and I think this is why when this all first kicked off, I was a bit like, this will be fine. It'll just think people will carry on moving. I never dreamt in a million years we'd be in lockdown worldwide like we are. I mean, I can remember I flew to Australia on a fam trip during foot and mouth, which would have been the early part of 2002, just before I left retail travel. And one of the questions they asked you as you came into Australia, the Australians have always been quite strict with things like this, was, have you come from a metropolis or from the countryside? Metropolis, I was fine, off I went. The girl behind me that was on our fam trip said, oh, I come from the countryside. Big mistake.
Oh.
We were all waiting outside of the airport for her. We don't know what, we didn't at the time know, what is she doing? But anyway, she came out dragging her suitcase, clutching her shoes. They'd basically, when she'd said she lived in the countryside, opened her suitcase, taken the shoes off her feet, taken every pair of shoes out of her, or footwear out of her suitcase, and basically sheep dipped them into this disinfectant thing, and then handed them back to her. So she literally came out carrying these sopping wet shoes, none of which she could put on her feet.
Oh, wow.
Just like, what am I going to do? She literally had nothing to put on her feet because they literally sheep dipped her every single pair of shoes she had, because that was their way of trying to control foot and mouth, was by disinfecting everybody's shoes. So thank God I came from a city. So there's always been an impact to travel, and I guess I just expected something like that, not this.
Well, it's been fascinating, and I've loved learning more about you. And we've chatted before, and you've helped me out a bit.
Yeah.
I can't remember what we were doing, but you were in Canada?
Yes.
You were in Canada. We had a chat over Teams or something in Canada, I think it was.
Yeah, it was. It was last. What must have been like last June.
Yeah, last year. So we've been in touch quite a bit, and it's lovely to get to know, more about your business. And I'm sure that the VAs listening will be really fascinated as well at the range of things that you can do.
Yeah, and that's something I want to sort of. What I'm looking to do once we. There's no point doing anything now. Once the travel industry is back open and back running, I do want to try and launch something to assist the VAs with clients' travel, more probably on the holiday side, but there is opportunity there for me to help them out, probably as an associate on the business side, but looking to perhaps do some incentives that if they pass bookings to me, etc., on the travel side, that I can help them out and things like that. So.
No, I'm sure they'll be taking you up on that.
Yes, we just need to be able to get somewhere.
Exactly. So listeners, thank you for joining us. Thank you very much, Jules. All Jules' contact details will be on the webpage, as it's now week 11, so you should be kind of used to the drill now. And we're gonna say thank you very much to Jules for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome, and we'll see you online somewhere soon.
No doubt.
So Jo, we just spent some time talking there with Jules Taylor of Tailor Made PA, and I found it quite interesting to hear of the different range of services that Jules offers. And what did you take away from that?
I think it's really interesting to hear about different VAs and the type of services, and how Jules is able to blend lots of different experience from her previous working life, her love of sports, her love of travel, her experience as a travel agent, and her love of a colour-coded diary, and blend them into a business that she's now making a success of.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. And I've remembered when she first started out and she wasn't posting as Tailor Made PA, she was kind of lurking in the groups and things as she got all her foundations right, until she was ready to take that jump, quit the job and launch properly. And
yeah,
I was certainly very impressed, very, very impressed by that. And actually, in our first interview, when we talked about Amanda, she talked about do your research. And that's what I kind of took out of that. Jules talks a lot about the amount of research she did before she took the leap, or before she decided on her direction of travel. There you go, that word again.
Yeah.
So that travel word. And the fact that she can help other VAs booking travel for their clients, which must be, it's quite a specialised thing. I know I end up down a rabbit hole if I'm ever looking at travel options, and it does my head in after a while, which is why I leave it to him to do that, because he's the sort of thing he's really good at. But bookings, that takes me into talking about our app or tip or topic or tool of the week. And if we're talking about bookings, we want to talk this week about what kind of systems do we use to book our appointments. So of course we all use, well, most of us use either Outlook or G Suite, and we can invite individuals to meetings through our calendars. So in Outlook, you'd have a meeting invite, the same thing in G Suite or Google, even in Google Mail. And we can invite people to meetings like that. But what about where you need to have or offer an option to a client to book a call with you, which is either a charged call, if for me it might be training, or it might be a discovery call where there'd be no fee attached. So how do we do that, and what kind of software systems do we use for that? So Jo, let's kick off with, what do you use to get your clients to book time with you?
I am trialing Microsoft bookings at the moment. Over my years as a VA, I have tried out a range of tools: Calendly, Acuity Schedule. 10 to 8 is one that I quite like. I use that with a specific client that I work with. I like Microsoft Bookings. It integrates with everything, but I find it just not quite not quite there in terms of the functionality compared with those dedicated tools. So at the moment, while I'm trialing it, I don't know whether I will actually love it in its current format. How about you, Shelley?
Well, as you know, I am a Microsoft gal. I am an Office 365 lover. I really do love all the packages there. And I was very excited when they launched Bookings, which is probably about a couple of years ago now.
Yeah.
And I did use it for a while. But like you say, I have also found it's not quite got all the functionality that I want. And so I use something else, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the other thing about Bookings that one of the things that kind of made me start to think about not using it was that when it first launched, you could add a Book Me button to your Facebook page and connect Microsoft Bookings to Facebook. And they removed that option about 6-8 months ago. They kind of discontinued that. They took away that integration. So I can't connect it. So I decided just not to use it anymore. But I also, around that time, got the opportunity through my love of AppSumo, which I've talked about before, to jump on Book Like a Boss, which is an online platform. And I got in a lifetime deal at their startup rate, which I don't know, like $49 or something. So it was almost a kind of, well, all I've lost is $49 if I don't like it. And I actually really like it. So what it does for me is it integrates with my Outlook. It integrates with Office 365. So that's the first thing. Any appointments that get booked through Book Like a Boss filter through into my Outlook calendar, which I love, which all of those that you've mentioned do the same thing.
Yes.
It also gives me the ability to build landing pages. So any of our podcast guests will have been sent a link to what looks like a very nice website. It's all branded like Tomorrow's VA, and it's got the calendar there where I can set my availability for that purpose. So we've decided what days we're available to interview people, and those are the only days that are available in that calendar. The second part of it is it integrates with Zoom. So when one of our guests books an appointment through that link, it creates a Zoom meeting for me and puts it straight in my calendar. It sends me an email telling me I've got a new meeting. It sets up the Zoom meeting in my calendar, and it emails the guest a confirmation and all the Zoom bits that you would expect to receive. And all of that is really good. The cherry on the cake is I can create services as well. So a service is something that's paid for. So, for example, if you wanted to book a one-to-one training session with me, I have a service package, is what Book Like a Boss calls it, called, I can't remember exactly what I called it. I should have looked it up before we came on, shouldn't I? Never mind. You can book a session with me and you can pay for that. And not only can you book it, it goes in the calendar, it will also take the money. So it will pay me through that. So for me, it does. It takes the payment, it books everything in my calendar, and it's kind of seamless. And I'm really enjoying using it. And I've embedded it on the website. So if you went to Tomorrow's VA and you went to work with me one-to-one, you would see there a link to the Book Like a Boss calendar, which would allow you to book either a service or a discovery call with me, which I think is pretty cool. So that's what I use. But I know Acuity is the one that I hear the most, and Calendly, that's the other one.
Yes, yeah.
The one I use is Book Like a Boss. So that's what we use. So that's our tool of the week this week, Book Like a Boss, or Microsoft Bookings. And if you're a new person just starting out and you've got Office 365 business account, then do use Microsoft Bookings, because it's definitely got enough in there as a starter,
Absolutely.
as a starter package, when you don't need to be spending extra money, because all of the other packages will charge a monthly fee, and they might give you a free trial. And at the beginning, when you're not that busy, a free trial is almost wasted until you get busier. So I would use Microsoft Bookings to begin with, and you can always graduate later. And you never know, they may bring in some added functionality to it further down the line. So have we got anything else you want to tell our listeners this week, Jo?
No, not at all. It's been a jam-packed week, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the week. Sort of quite quiet for the rest of this week. We've seemed to have kind of come to a natural break in our recordings, and I think our next one is Friday this week. Is it Thursday or Friday this week, or even next week?
It's tomorrow.
Oh,
tomorrow. Tomorrow. We're interviewing somebody tomorrow afternoon.
Well,
and then we have one more next week. Yeah,
I could have sworn it was later in the week, but never mind. That's
I'm looking at my calendar just before. I'm going to. I think we were talking just before we came on air about what we were going to do the rest of the day, and I was saying that I think I might actually give myself the afternoon off. It's been the last couple of weeks while we've got all of these episodes recorded have been really
full on,
really full on, and I think I'm going to go for a nice walk as the weather is not too hot yet to do that. So I think that's what I'm going to do this afternoon. So
I think that's a lesson for us all who work virtually and remotely, and it's the flexibility of working as and when.
Yeah, and I'm my own worst boss sometimes. And that kind of, I should do this or I need to do that. But the reason that we chose this way of life is so that we can take that hour out if we need to or want to for it.
Yes.
For that matter. So I'm going to love you and leave you for this week's episode, Jo. It's been a cracking episode again.
Yes.
And listeners, remember you can get in touch. We are starting to think about our next lineup, our next season, if you like, of guest interviews. And if you'd love to be featured on the podcast like Jules was today, please do get in touch and let us know. Let us know what you do, what kind of services you offer, and tell us why you think it would be interesting for our listeners to hear about you and from you. And you can get in touch with us on the website or email shelley@tomorrowsva.com or joe@jlbsupportsolutions.co.uk. And we'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now. You've been listening to Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants with Shelley Fishel and Jo Brianti. We look forward to seeing you or hearing you or you hearing us in the next episode, which is coming very soon.